have with us Joseph Alves. Welcome, Joseph. Welcome to the show. So Joseph, tell us a little bit about yourself, like where you're from and what you currently do.
Sure. I live in Foxborough currently, but I grew up in overseas, and I spent the last 20 years in the United States. And before then, my family and I, my dad in particular, worked for the Department of Defense. And so in the Marshall Islands, there's a military base that works in conjunction with a military base in the United States, and they do intercontinental ballistic missile testing, so back and forth.
You went there, you were born in America, but went to Marshall Islands for active duty, right?
Well, Department of Defense. So my dad wasn't in the military, but he worked for organizations that did military work. Raytheon, MIT, Lockheed Martin, companies like that. So
you grew up in Marshall Islands?
Yeah, so I left in elementary school in second grade. I was there from third grade on to graduation from high school.
How was your experience living in Marshall Islands? Is it like completely different than you saw, you know, as you were raised in US a little bit?
Sure, it is different. A lot of it's the same. It's a military base, so they try to make it as home as possible, but you are plopped right in the middle of a foreign country. The host nation was, you know, since it's a series of islands, the host nation was just 2 miles away, the island that, you know, a lot of the indigenous population lived in. And so we were always in constant contact. A lot of my classmates were from the Marshall Islands, but along with all Americans that came for work.
So, like, did you see a lot of kids from like other countries as well? Because as US deploys, was there like people? Because I have like read a little bit about Marshall Islands. Like there was a British invasion, German invasion for some reason, and then Japanese invasion in 1914. So, did that made a lot of other countries get involved in those islands and made that like a multicultural population there?
Yes and no. When I first went there, there was a lot of surnames that I was very familiar with, like Brooms and Santos, things, names that you would hear from Hispanic or even Portuguese. And so like you mentioned, throughout the course of history, the Marshall Islands was kind of caught in that intercontinental trade from the sailing from Europe to Asia as they were crossing the Pacific from South America. And so the Spanish were there, then the Spanish-American War happened, and then they lost it to the Germans who came in. And then World War I happened, and Germany lost all their properties. And then the Japanese started expanding their empire, and World War II happened. And then after World War II, the United States and the Marshall Islands made a compact of free association. Basically, the United States would have a base there, do some of the work that they needed to do. In effect, they would also support the Marshall Islands with defense and economy.
Did you face any difficulties, like when you moved from America to Marshall Islands, like in terms of language or?
Yeah, so even though the island, one island in particular spoke majority English, the rest of the country spoke Marshallese. Given the fact that I have brown skin, I also look very much like the population of the Marshall Islands. So it was a little of a confusing time, because when I was there, some people thought that I was Marshallese and would speak to me in their native language, and I couldn't exactly respond. And in the early stages, that was a bit difficult because it was treated as a sign of disrespect because I couldn't answer or would ignore or pretend not to know. Even though I wasn't pretending, I really didn't know. There was a little bit of friction early on. But as I lived there, learned more, a lot of my friends were Marshallese. I became to learn more about the culture. They learned more about me. They realized that I wasn't Portuguese, though I had a Portuguese last name. I am Cape Verdean. And so they learned more about me, I learned more about them, and over time we became really good friends. And that friendship extended to a point when we all moved back to the United States. Even some of those classmates of mine who graduated from high school there, and then they moved on to go to college in the United States. The high school was an American high school. However, the deal between the United States and the host nation was that they would have some of their children become students at the high school so that they can learn, just learn from the American culture, and then also go on to college and other things to broaden their horizons, and also bring a lot of that back to the Marshall Islands.
So are there like a lot of provisions for the kids from Marshall Islands when they come for studies here? Like, is like government aid scholarships or things like that to support students?
Some from the Marshall Islands, some from the United States. Again, a lot of it depends on where you fall on the socioeconomic scale. So even though it is a foreign country, they have the same kinds of systems here as we do here. You know, we have upper class, lower class, middle class, and each of those classes have struggles. And so some individuals did come. Some came on their own volition. Some came with the support of the Marshall Islands, whether it be through grants from the government, and then also the same through the United States.
How long have you been on Marshall Islands?
So I was there for about 11 years.
11, oh, that's a long time.
Yeah, from the 3rd grade up until I graduated high school. And you asked earlier if there were a lot of different cultures, and there were. So a lot of the individuals that were also associated with the military had traveled throughout the world and became married, and they had children. So a lot of my friends were Chinese or Thai or Indian or Pakistani. I mean, every continent was represented. The nature of the work there brought all kinds of people. It was very technical, so a lot of software engineers, electrical engineers, and those individuals can be from all walks of life. So it was really a strong multicultural environment. We celebrated a lot of cultures, especially Asian Pacific heritage. And so when I came back to the United States, it was a bit of a shock because of that. It wasn't as much of that celebration as I saw there.
How was it when you, after 11 years in Marshall Islands, how was it for you to come back to your own country? Like, did it feel like you are already like a Marshallese now and not as much as American anymore? I
wouldn't quite say like a Marshallese. I would say maybe Pacific Islander. I spent a lot of time in Hawaii and some of the other island nations, you know, just traveling and visiting. Also having a lot of friends from each of those areas. Some of that culture rubbed off on me, and being there for that amount of time, I love the food, love the celebrations that they have. Coming back here, it was very strange.
Was it a reverse cultural shock?
It was. So when I came home, or what I call home now, a lot of individuals didn't know how to receive me. So it's kind of like that reverse. You know, when I moved, individuals didn't know how to receive me, and I didn't really understand the culture. And when I came back, individuals didn't understand where I had been. They didn't know where the Marshall Islands was on the map. They were confused, like, are you Cape Verdean or are you Marshallese? I'm like, well, I am Cape Verdean in ancestry. I speak the language, or I understand the language. My family is from the south coast of Massachusetts, or they all immigrated to the south coast of Massachusetts, New Bedford, Fall River, Fairhaven. And so they didn't quite understand that I had this entirely different experience in a different country, and I came back. And I had brought back with me a lot of those things that I'd learned. I love to surf, I love to swim, dive, fish. And even though you do a lot of those things here, it was different than what they had encountered or expected. So they kind of shunned me. Sometimes they shunned me away just because they didn't think I would fit in. And sometimes I felt like I wasn't going to fit in just because of the difference of opinions or difference of just doing things and living life.
How did you navigate through all of these? Because it could be a lot to take in, specifically because you were in some other part of the country and you were made feel so inclusive and, you know, being a part of a bigger culture, and then coming back to more of a homogeneous atmosphere. It could be quite a lot to take in, but then behind your, like, in your brain, you still have the fact that you're born here, you are a citizen, you are from this country, and still you don't feel like it, or people around you, the environment has become so homogeneous that you don't feel like you belong here anymore, despite the fact that it's your home. So how did you navigate? Because it could be a lot of contradictory thoughts, you know?
Absolutely.
So how did you navigate through that?
So when I first came back, I just immersed myself. I try to learn as much as I can. I worked very hard, I got a job, I worked hard, I got a car. And then once I got a car, I started going everywhere. I mean, maybe in some places that I shouldn't have been. I may have, accidentally gone down the wrong road where it said, residents only. And in exploring, I didn't really notice that and come back. But otherwise, I just went as far as I could around the state of Massachusetts. I know I was going to college in Dartmouth, at UMass Dartmouth. And from there, I wasn't afraid to leave that immediate area. And so I met a lot of individuals and went to a lot of different places. And so it was kind of like that growing up. once you're there and you're comfortable and familiar, you start breaking out of your comfort zone. And you want to learn. And the thing for me is food. I love to eat, and I love different types of cuisine. And that's the one thing that I think bonds me with a lot of different people is, you know, we can always share a meal. And I really would love to try food from your country. You know, I have an expansive palate, and you know, even if it's something that I've never seen or heard of, I'm definitely willing to try. So something like here, I traveled and I wanted to know more about the seafood of New England. So I always would drive up to Boston or to Maine and go to the Cape. And so that would, after a while, that made things more comfortable. Being familiar with my area, not limiting myself just to like the college campus, breaking out and just seeing what was out there and seeing if this is a place that I really wanted to stay.
It looks like you had to get yourself familiarized once again with your own country.
Exactly.
It could be like quite challenging at times. When you mentioned food, what kind of food you had or experienced? Because, you know, at Marshall Islands there were like multicultural, so I'm sure there's like vast amount of like different kind of cuisines. And when you got here, did you miss it? Did you feel that, you know, the food could be one of the reason why I want to go back? Like, you know, I loved it over there. It's like food, and, you know, food is one thing that binds, like, you know, people. And then food is the one thing that can also keep you, you know, binding from other people, because something that's very close to you. For me, Indian food is available here, but food from my place, like my local food, I never find it here. And I know I could never find it here because it's very specific food in a specific region. Did you have any of that, like in Marshall Islands, like very specific foods that you cannot get here?
Some things you can't get here. Some things, if I were to make it, you might say, oof, I don't know about that. And so the Marshall Islands in particular, the island that I lived on, Kwajalein, was just a melting pot of cultures, like I said. And then so with that came all the different various types of food. Asian Pacific food in particular is my favorite. It's something that I brought back here with me. I got married, my wife and I cook a lot of Asian food, a lot of food from like the Hawaiian Islands or the Philippines or Japan. And so I miss it a lot because it was something that I grew up with, that I learned a lot. It's something that bonded me with others, and I learned it. And then there was every culture had their own. And so when all my friends got together, we would almost have like a little dish. We would have boat trips that we'd go out to other islands, and one friend would bring musubi. Musubi is just like a Hawaiian snack. It has seaweed, rice, and Spam. But with the Spam, they fry it up with soy sauce and sugar, and it makes it sweet. And why Spam? Well, during World War II, the Marshallese were fascinated by canned meat. So during World War II, there's a lot of those rations going to the Americans for the war effort, and they were amazed by the fact that food can be stored in a container for almost an unlimited amount of time. And so those are, you know, with Americans going anywhere, there's positives and negatives. You know, the positives are that, you know, a culture can learn new things, the exchange of information, but at the same time, some of our bad habits might come with it. You know, Spam is not the healthiest thing, but it's not something that that I eat all the time. It's just one of those snack foods that you just like, it's something that you can take on a trip with you, you can wrap it up. And it was just one of those things that brings me back. My wife likes it, my kids love it. My kids have never been to the Marshall Islands. My wife has never been to the Marshall Islands. But, you know, some of those foods that I've brought back, that in particular, they love. And it always, when we make it together, it makes me feel like I'm back there.
Do you have, like, on Marshall Island, were there any, like, social, economic, cultural taboos that you experienced that you don't see here in the U.S.?
Taboos, things that you shouldn't do there that we do here?
No, like something like, you know, something that are not so good socially, like social people, like some kind of discrimination, violence, or, you know, we have in India, we have this caste discrimination that shouldn't be done. It's not ethical, but it's banned by the government, by the constitution, but it still happens. It's not visible from outside, but inside it still happened. Were there any such issues that you saw in Marshall Islands because with a lot of cultures come, with a lot of people come different culture, and with different culture, they bring their own, social things and taboos and, all that.
I guess there's something similar to what you were explaining, like the caste system. There's the, I guess for the lack of a better word, there's the normal people, and there's the folks that are like the royalty, the chiefs, the individuals that, through lineage own the islands, and then everyone else lives there. And so to a certain extent you saw some of that, where there were the royalty and then the normal folks. In that sense, there was like sharing. You would always share with someone higher, but they may not share with you.
Oh, okay.
And so in that case, I mean, that was something when I came here, sometimes we share with everybody, sometimes we share with nobody. And so the sharing, though, there was always sharing. And so coming back here and not being able to just like offer up, or when you do offer something, or something like, well, why are you sharing with me? It's like, well, this is what I do. We always come to a party when we bring food, or we bring this kind of food. And so there wasn't too much of that. Given that the American culture was there was a lot of desire to be American. And so they were the culture was learning a lot from us, from the American culture. And some of our positive and bad habits would spill over to them. But I did not see myself like anything that was jarring or different than from here. I saw a lot of us American culture going in that direction.
You were in Marshall Islands, but you knew, right, when you were there, that you have to come back one day.
I did, yeah. So it's a military base, and you can't stay there forever. And if you wanted to leave the island, going to a different island would be a significant culture shock. It's like almost going from a first world country to a third world country. The islands are very small. They're very subject to climate change. A lot of the storms that have happened recently have been decimating the islands. What they call king tides, the extreme high tides that, it doesn't have to have a storm associated with it. It's just a certain, level of the tide with the conjunction of the moon, and it washes over these islands that are only, a foot or 2 or 3 feet above sea level. So at some point, I had to leave because I didn't work for the government, and I also had to go to school. What were you going to do if you weren't going to go to school and you weren't going to work in the government? You weren't going to stay there and be supported. You have to go off and do your own. So I haven't been back since I left, actually, over almost 25 years ago. It's just a place that, if I chose a particular track in life, if I chose to go work, for the Department of Defense, I may have had a chance to go and visit, and I do know some people that have done that, but I have not been there in a long time. There's a large, I guess what you call expatriate community, whether it be Marshallese or individuals like me that have moved from the United States to the Marshall Islands. There's a large community in the United States. We're very active in meeting up. There's actually one individual I went to college with. One day he showed up 2 years after I started, and I was like, what are you doing here? And he's like, I didn't know you were here either. And when we left, or when I left, it was back in the early 2000s. Email was just starting. There weren't a lot of cell phones. And then when you're a kid, you're not like, interested in saying, hey, take my contact information. I'm 8,000 miles away, but give me a call if you're ever around. I didn't think I would see any of those people ever again. But through the power of social media and email and better ways to travel, I've been able to go pretty much all over the country. I used to work in a job in healthcare, that I traveled around the country, and I made it a point to try and meet individuals that I grew up with when I was wherever I was.
So when you were there and you knew that you had to one day come back, did you ever think of like, oh, I have to go back to my country, and then sort of, I don't know if I can call it an American dream, but your own dreams of like going to school and then getting to a position, did you have that in your mind? And do you think in like 25 years, of course, like have you, able to catch up on all of those things that you had all planned for when you were there?
Well, to be honest with you, the location was so idyllic. It was like, it's a 2-mile long island with like the best beaches. The water was bath water, 80 degrees. You can see from a boat, you can stand looking over the water, you can see 40 feet down, you can see the fish swimming, you can see the sharks or anything else that was in the water. And so at the time, I really wasn't thinking of beyond the beach. I didn't think I would ever leave until the point that we graduated, and that harsh reality was like, oh, well, you're going. And I had applied to colleges, but those things, it was all passive. I was just doing it because I was supposed to do it. And then once I got here, that shock was like, oh no.
Everybody's running.
I may never go back. And so that's when, I think it's when I got back here is when I started thinking about what you were talking about. What can I do? What path can I live in life to maybe get back home? The farthest that I got was Hawaii. You need special permission to go to the Marshall Islands, and at that time I just didn't coordinate that effort. It's also very expensive. To go from Hawaii to the Marshall Islands is thousands of dollars, just because of the route. Flights only go about twice a week.
Oh, okay.
It's not a commercial route. The plane, it's one plane that goes from Hawaii to the Marshall Islands and then ends up in Guam, turns around and comes right back. So as I got older, I started to miss it more. My wife, I talk to her about it all the time. She wants to go. The kids, my kids have heard about it. They want to go. And sometimes it hurts a little bit just because now trying to take the whole family is not so much impossible, but something that would take a lot of effort and time, because it takes about a day and a half to get there.
Okay.
I mean, I'm sure going from here to India.
Oh yes.
Overnight, long flights, many
24
airports.
to 24
Exactly.
more than 24 hours.
Yep, for me it was 18. So that you would have to go for going for a week doesn't really make sense. You need to go for an extended period of time.
Do you know Marshallese language?
I did. To be honest with you, I did when I was younger. But and also like Cape Verdean. So Marshallese, since I don't have anyone around and I don't hear it frequently.
So you don't speak anymore?
I lost a lot of it. There's phrases that if someone was speaking, I could pick up on it. And it's the same thing with Cape Verdean. When we moved to the Marshall Islands, the only person that spoke Cape Verdean was my mom. And so I know her Cape Verdean, so to speak. When we moved back, it took me a long time to reacclimate. Even to hear it from her sisters, there's slight differences. They were here the whole time. They interacted with many other Cape Verdeans, and so it's not to say it was a different language. It was just a different vernacular sometimes. And so it took me a long time to get acclimated. And so my mom always looks at me and she speaks to me, and then she cocks her head and says, "Do you understand what I'm saying?" I'm like, "I do." It's just the processor is just translating it a little slower than it used to.
Do you mind saying something in Cape Verdean language to our viewers, like your last thoughts or anything that inspires them?
Well, there's one phrase. I mean, it comes up in songs a lot, in Cape Verdean songs a lot. It's "na terra." That means, I think roughly translated, it's like my land, my country, my home. And so they speak of it in such a way, when they're in America, they always long to go back home. And so for me, that has that meaning, but it also, as an immigrant or a person that has left and come back or is familiar with the immigrant story, as pretty much all of my family, that could also mean that here's also your home. So even though you always long to go back home, you have brought your home here, and now this is your home. So "na terra" could also mean my home, my land, the United States. And we all have our enclaves, and you can go visit those enclaves all the time, and it's always a reminder of home. And for me, meeting with my friends and talking about the good old times is a reminder of the Marshall Islands for me. And so it works both ways, that this is my home, but I also have other homes too that I could potentially go to one day.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining today and sharing your beautiful story. I'm pretty sure not many people might have heard about Marshall Islands.
No, not at all.
I myself including, because when I heard about it, I tried to look at it, and it was like, oh my God, it has so much of history, So thank you so much for sharing that with our viewers. We got a load of information today, and thank you for coming on the show.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for watching my immigration story. I am your host, Sujata Ramdeke. You can watch this show on local channels or on our website, fcatv.org. I'll see you next time.